The wise and the good of all nations would blush at our political depravity. Edward Coles, Illinois Governor, 1823.
Illinois became a state in 1818. What you may not have known is that written into its Constitution were provisions protecting ownership of slaves. That's right, slavery was written into its Constitution. Now, at that time, it was not surprising, considering that many politicians, including the state's first governor, Shadrach Bonds, and its first lieutenant governor, Pierre Menard, both owned slaves or indentured servants. Ironically, there were three types of slaves in this supposed free state of Illinois: French slaves and their descendants, indentured servants, and slaves brought temporarily from other states. One early immigrant to Illinois was Edward Coles. He was dispatched to Illinois as a representative of President James Madison. Coles had been born in Virginia to a prominent slaveholding family. Despite that heritage, Coles freed his own slaves while on his journey to Illinois, and he helped them establish themselves in the new state. Coles settled in Edwardsville, Illinois in 1819. He was elected governor in 1822. As an anti-slavery candidate, he faced staunch opposition from those who favored slavery. Yet, in spite of that opposition, he won the governorship. In his inaugural address, Coles called for the emancipation of all slaves remaining in Illinois. At that time, pro-slavery legislators called for a constitutional convention designed to make Illinois a slave state. Coles was successful in leading anti-slavery forces in voting down the convention, yet, despite his efforts, slavery persisted in Illinois.
So I want to get back to those points, though, about our early days as a state. And we're founded, again, from the bottom up. So everybody's had a chance to look at the map. And because of that, and what was it called?
The Ohio River.
The Ohio River. The Ohio River was bringing people west from eastern states. Okay, so they would often travel from the west, from the east to the west, and come along the Ohio River and then slowly populate the south. So early on, there are significant populations of African Americans living in Illinois around the southern portion. Kaskaskia in particular, our first capital in 1818, is one of those locations. Now, our capital city was Kaskaskia from 1818 to 1820. How long is that?
2 years.
Only 2 years. And then in 1820, we moved up to Vandalia, which is right about there. Can everybody see that? So they moved kind of into the middle part of the bottom. And from 1820 to 1837, they were gathered in Vandalia when they wanted to do government business. But in 1837, they changed the location from Vandalia to Springfield. So we have a capital city first in Kaskaskia. Then we have a capital city from 1820 to 1837 in Vandalia. And then from 1837 through today, this is where our government met. And so for people who were trying to shape laws that told people what they could do, how they should live, and whether or not they were free, those laws from 1837 forward were made here. And so in a big way, history begins here, where we're gathered at right now. A house divided against itself cannot stand. So you painted that imagery of a house cracking apart in your mind, right? And we're all on the same page. What was dividing that house, our country?
Slavery. North and south.
Divided north and south by slavery. That's right. I sit you in these seats today where the legislators worked so that you know that you have a voice. And now your voice technically, in here, it's a museum, right? But what would you see if I opened those shutters? What building would you see if I opened those shutters 2.5 blocks from here? You would see what? Say it louder, Willie.
The new Capitol.
The new Capitol. And that's where the votes count. And Willie and Jonas and all of you, you can cast a vote there if you want to run for office someday. And that didn't happen in Lincoln's time. That's why we save these places. That's why we recreate these desks. That's why we wanted you to sit in them today. But in Lincoln's time, the only people who could even sit in these seats looked like me. That's it. But because of the struggle, because of the progress, so much more was achieved. You know, I think the most important day in the history of this building was a day when Lincoln wasn't even here. Does that make sense? The most important thing that ever happened in this building happened when Lincoln wasn't here. You see, the last day of January 1865, they passed the 13th Amendment that ended slavery everywhere. They passed it out of Congress. But our system of governance mandates that states get a chance to ratify that amendment, and you have to have a certain number of states before it can become law. And so the 13th Amendment was passed out of Congress on the last day of January, and on February 1st, the legislators who worked here, they gathered immediately, and they wanted Illinois to be the first state to ratify the amendment to our Constitution that ended slavery everywhere. It's an amazing occurrence that Illinois became the first state. But they did. February 1st, 1865, Illinois became the first state to bring about the step that would lead to the ending of slavery everywhere. Isn't it great to be first?
The institution of slavery is founded on both injustice and bad policy.
Abraham Lincoln,